All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to this exciting session on the impact of fashion influencers. We have panelists here from 3 different time zones. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, attendees. My name is Lexi Wright, and I am a community engagement ambassador with Fashion Takes Action, who is putting on this fantastic discussion. I'm so glad that we're all here today to gather and discuss the impacts of influencer marketing, specifically its impacts on the environment and society. Now, it's been proven that influencer marketing works to bring both companies' profits and campaigns' attention. This is largely because consumers seek the advice of others for purchasing decisions, and many influencers have built great rapport and trust with their followers. For 78% of people, influencers actually have the greatest impact of all media, greater than TV, news, and even government campaigns. There's been a number of negative societal impacts brought on and worsened by fashion influencers, including the promotion of overconsumption, fast fashion, and social pressure to stick to trends, to name a few, but there have also been many, many wins. On TikTok, videos under the hashtag EcoTalk have 630 million views and counting, a testament to the appetite out there for environmental content in new forms. Influencers like Annette and Lindura, who we have joined with us here today, are showing their audiences the possibilities of and joy of embracing sustainable fashion. And even scientists, such as those on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, believe that influencers can increase the adoption of low-carbon technologies, behaviors, and lifestyles. Today, we're going to hear from 3 fantastic experts who are our panelists who are experts on this topic. But before I go on to introduce them, I just want to quickly go over how we are going to run this session and the Q&A. So we're going to have 30 minutes of discussion between myself and the panelists. And as we discuss, if anything comes to mind, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. And at the end of those 30 minutes, we will take approximately 15 minutes to answer any questions that pop up there. You can also upvote questions that you think are a great idea to respond to in the Q&A box. Jumping into our introductions, we are joined here today with Annette Vartanian, who is a marketing consultant, sustainable creator, interior stylist, and mother based in Los Angeles. She launched her blog, A Vintage Splendor, in 2010 to share her love of conscious living, sustainability, and vintage shopping. She also hosts a paid subscription service called the Splendor Collective and started her own YouTube channel 6 months ago, which has been a great success. We also have Lindura joining us from Toronto, who is a model and emerging actor. Lindura has appeared on over 50 commercials, dozens of campaigns, and has recently made her major TV debut in a hit series called Sullivans Crossing. When Lindura is not in front of the camera, she uses her platform to advocate for equity, eco-conscious living, and sustainable fashion choices. She's also the co-founder of Plastic Free Toronto, a social media-based educational platform. And finally, we have Dr. Elaine Ritch joining us all the way from Edinburgh, Scotland. Elaine is a reader in fashion and marketing at the Glasgow Caledonian University's School for Business and Society. She has edited 2 books on innovation in the fashion industry and critical marketing and consumer society. Elaine has made significant contributions to the sustainable fashion literature over the last decade and is a member of the Sustainable Fashion Scotland Steering Group and leads various research groups. Now, to jump into our questions, Elaine, through your vast research, could you tell us a little bit about what you've learned about the power and potential of influencer marketing?
Yes, well, as you said, it's significant in the way that it shifts and alters behaviours. And the interesting thing I think about influencers are they humanize a brand, they bring it to life, and they make it relatable. And influencers are kind of multifaceted, not just a selling commodity, but they're bringing their personality, their thoughts, emotions, sometimes vulnerabilities to connect with consumers. And that becomes an important tool of engaging with an audience. So they're not just about selling commodities, they're actually about selling wider lifestyles. And sometimes, as you spoke about in the introduction there, this can be about excessive consumption. this idea of consumption relating to a good life means that the more that we buy, then that's demonstrative of how successful we are in life. So we see influencers as impacting and shaping social behaviour and ideas around what is socially acceptable, which I guess relates to those fashion hauls we often see influencers portraying as excessive consumption and the unboxing of that and the excitement that that might bring to them. But we also see consumers increasingly questioning the impact of that as information from climate scientists filters into wider society. So consumers are looking for alternatives, and this is where sustainable fashion influencers can help shift that paradigm away from excessive consumption and this constant need for the new, to ideas about reusing what's already out there and giving it a second life in some way.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for that. Really interesting to, hear about the role that consumers have, and definitely bringing a critical eye to everything they see. That's definitely very prevalent. Now jumping to Annette and Lindura, as influencers, I would love to hear how you use your platform as a force for sustainable and socially responsible fashion. And if an organization approaches you to collaborate, how do you decide whether you'd like to work with them or promote their product or message or not? We're going to jump to Annette first.
Thank you so much for having me. So as you mentioned in my intro, I have been blogging and talking about sustainable fashion for almost 15 years. And I started my blog because I wanted to make sustainable fashion attainable and accessible. And I wanted to do away with this notion that, thrifting is gross, or if you're buying vintage, you look like you walked out of a Mad Men ad, or if you're buying sustainable fashion, then you're spending a fortune on it. For me, I want to educate my followers on being thoughtful about what they're buying and building a timeless wardrobe that doesn't have to be boring, and it could be very, very unique. I am a maximalist, and I would say my wardrobe is timeless. I have colors, I have prints, I have all sorts of things, and I know I'm going to own these pieces for years. I still have pieces I've had for 20 years, and I really want to get people to just stop and think about it. I also have a large following that is very interested in luxury fashion, and what I do is educate them that, why spend $10,000 on the bag that everybody else has? You can spend about 10% less, or actually only 10% of that budget, and buy that same designer bag or something like it, vintage or secondhand. You're saving money, you have a unique style, and it's really getting people to rethink fashion and consumption. Of course, like, to completely eliminate buying something is probably not feasible for most people. So I want them to know there are a lot of different avenues for them and what to look for when they are looking at buying sustainable fashion. And I do have a ton of brands that reach out to me that want to partner. A lot of them make sense, and then a lot of them don't make sense. So the first thing I look is to see if the brand is transparent about the production of their items. So if this is a brand that is producing new items, I look at where and how the items are being produced. Are they ethical towards their employees? Are they paying them a living wage? A lot of times brands will have this information out there. If they don't, I ask the brand, what is your stance on this? There are plenty of brands, I would say larger brands, that are B Corps, that kind of gives that stamp that, hey, they've met these requirements. So that helps the process. But there are a ton of small businesses that are sustainable that can't pay for that certification or go through those milestones. So I just ask them, where are your items produced? Like, how is it being produced? What items are you using? And I use those, like all of these items, to decide if I'm going to partner with this brand, because I'm ultimately putting my stamp on this partnership. And if I would not wholeheartedly wear something or support it, there's no way I'm partnering with a brand.
Thanks, Annette. Lindura, over to you. How do you use your platform, which has, many followers who might have found you from your acting or TV, to really promote these ideas?
Yeah, I would say my following is not necessarily like an ego following, because it's just like a lot of my friends, a lot of my coworkers. But in that sense, what I like to do is come at it from a standpoint of relatability, in that like I wasn't always an eco person either. For a long time, I was buying into like the fast fashion trends and trying to keep up with like looking cool and stylish and like having 15 bathing suits. But having been there, I kind of understand the journey of how hard it is to, once you start to become more aware of the issues with fast fashion, with overconsumption and all of those things, how do you change your behavior? It's not as easy as it sounds. And one of the key things that I found was that discovering other brands that are already doing the work was like the key to me being like, oh, so now it's not just like avoid fast fashion at all costs. It's like, let's just shop here instead. So like I feel like I rewired my brain a little bit. And so now what I like to do is highlight a lot of those brands that are doing amazing work. And when it comes to partnerships with brands that are reaching out to me, I feel like there are sustainability is a hugely like encompassing term, and there are many avenues towards it. So for me, I'm never looking for a brand to be perfect. I'm looking for a brand to be better in some way, shape, or form. So similar to what Annette said, a lot of the times it's looking for where are things produced, how are they being produced? Is there any sort of consideration for ethical wages, of course, as well as like the source of the fiber, not just like where it's being sewn, but like, is this coming from an organic cotton field, or is it just coming from like, who knows? There's so many different considerations that you can think about. So when a brand approaches me, or even when I discover a new brand that I'm like, ooh, should I shop there? I just like do the most digging to try and find out the most that I can about them. And it's also very telling to know like what a brand puts on its website indicates like how transparent it is. I love a brand that will fully just admit, actually, we don't know this yet, but we're working on it. Because that indicates that, you know, that same concept of we're always striving for better. So a lot of times I'll also look at what type of packaging they're using. Like, are they shipping it in plastic, or have they found like some way to like creatively upcycle fabrics that they're using and ship it in that? Who knows? So many options. But ultimately, like for me, what's most important is that like the brand is striving to continually improve and continually find ways to do things in a more sustainable way.
Thanks both. Those are great insights. And it's great to hear that you're both taking a really inclusive approach to bringing brands in and encouraging them to do good when you collaborate with them. So moving on to our next question, in the wake of Black Friday, and I guess now Cyber Monday, we've seen many influencers pushing the purchase of fast fashion and unnecessary goods. However, de-influencing is also taking the social media world by storm as a hot topic of discussion. To you, all of you panelists, how effective do you feel that de-influencing, this recent trend, is? And what place do you feel this holds in the world of marketing and consumption? We're going to jump to Elaine first.
Well, as I said before, I think that influencers impact upon social behaviours and what's acceptable or deemed normal. And just now it feels like we're in some kind of dominant paradigm where excessive consumption is paramount. And the UK has, you know, over the last, 5 to 10 years been impacted by Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which was not, something that we experienced previously. But there are many ways in which marketing has encouraged this impulsive, thoughtless consumption. So de-influencing really repositions that from a perspective of encouraging people to make the most of what they have. And we've seen some kind of creative ways in which research has looked at asking people to stop buying fashion and how that makes them feel, thinking about the environmental consequences. And people have spoken about the shame of recognizing that they've got a whole bunch of items in their wardrobe still with the tags on that they've never worn, and they know that they're never going to wear it, and how that makes them feel thinking about all the money that they've spent. So, and we've also seen that research has looked at the way in which people can say wear the same dress for 50 days, but style it differently. And I think that that's the role that degrowth can have in terms of influencing people to think differently about their wardrobes and maximise the utility that's already there.
Awesome, thank you. Lindura, what do you think?
So the term de-influencing actually just came to me with the introduction of this webinar. I haven't been seeing these trends on TikTok because I delete the app every 5 seconds. But I went and looked. I'm like, okay, let's see. What are these de-influencing things? And I think I have like two opinions about it. On the one hand, I love it because a lot of the de-influencing videos are just about exactly what Elaine mentioned, which is like, use what you already have. Don't be pressured to buy things. Or like people telling the stories of like how much debt they went into, like constantly shopping, and like how they feel about that. And I think that it's so important to be talking about these things and calling out these things and sharing our stories, and just like it's kind of like an online support group for like, we're all in this together, but we can do it. We can buy less. So on that side of things, I think it's really great. But what I also noticed is that a lot of the de-influencing videos are also like, don't buy this product because either it's really expensive and you don't need to spend that much money on it, or it doesn't work, like just a bad review, like this doesn't work for me, so don't buy it. And then there's that additional aspect of like some of those videos also then go an additional step of being like, do this instead and buy this other product instead, which to me is like, I don't think de-influencing can be looked at as like a sustainable necessarily like paradigm shift. I think it's how you're using it and what values your audience has. Like if an influencer is speaking to values that are just purely about money and saving money, then de-influencing might just be buying less expensive products, which in some cases isn't even necessarily good because someone's paying the true cost for that. So those were kind of like my two immediate takes on it. And I guess the like final thought I had about it is that having just discovered this term now, I realized that in many ways, I think I've been de-influencing, and a lot of sustainability influencers have been de-influencing without calling it that, just by educating people. Like, I'm like, oh, I just call that education. Like, I love Venetia Lamana's videos because she'll go and she'll just like break down all the things that I didn't know that a brand was involved in, that I'm like, I would not have known this otherwise. And it's good to know because it might change, like, oh, I might want to start supporting a different person now, or who knows. So I think there's a lot of ways to look at de-influencing, and not all of them are the direct, like, don't buy this type of structure. And I'm honestly like, I would love to hear Elaine's perspective on this. I'm curious to know, like, based on my very brief background in like psychology and cognitive science, that like telling people not to do something sometimes has the opposite effect of like them being like, well, I want to try it for myself and find out kind of vibe. And also just the fact of kind of like bad press is good press. There are so many brands that people were like, don't buy this, that would not have even been on my radar had I not now seen this video that's showing me this product, that I'm like, oh, interesting. And like the more you see a product, the more impact it has in your brain space, and the more you might want to be thinking about products. So the whole don't buy this energy, I don't know that that's for me, because it doesn't necessarily feel like, it's still focused on consumerism at the end of the day. It's still about buying something or not buying something, as opposed to like entirely shifting that energy and being like, how do we exist differently? What else can we focus our energy towards? What else could we be talking about? So that's my summary.
Absolutely great points. Thank you, Lindura. Annette, what do you have to add to that?
So I have to piggyback on what Lindura said. So I feel that when this trend started on TikTok, it was actually coming from a really good place, because it wasn't even sustainable influencers. It was consumers who were saying, hey, don't buy into the hype. Like, do not buy into the hype that X eyeshadow palette or this face mask or these boots, like you have to be happy and to be stylish. And so people were sharing their personal stories, which I loved seeing that. But I feel like now it's been co-opted by brands and bigger influencers who are doing exactly what you said, which is, well, don't buy this glass because it's like not pretty. You're not going to have it forever. Like, you need to buy this other one. This is what I think is great. Everybody hyped up this one particular one. Go and buy this. And I feel like it's equitable to the whole greenwashing that we experienced like a decade ago, where everyone and every brand was like just adding that green, eco-conscious. What does that mean? So I think as this happens, trends, they get really big, they get really popular, and then brands and I would say influencers who are very, marketing savvy are like, oh, I could use this to change consumer habits. So I think what I've done for years was always tell people, like, you don't need to buy anything for Black Friday or Cyber Monday unless it's been something that's on your list. Let's say you have had this specific item in your cart and you're just waiting for that deal because you need to save money. That's one thing, but you don't need anything. And that's why I'm constantly reminding people, like, build this timeless wardrobe. You're always going to look super stylish as long as you're confident in your wearing what makes you happy. And I do a lot of styling videos where I show how to style one piece multiple ways. And that's what people love to see, because it doesn't matter if it's like a sequin jacket. Like, I style that with like vintage torn up utility pants, but I also style it with a dress. Like, one piece can be styled multiple ways, and trying to train people and to just rethink fashion. So just want to remind people, like, pause, think about what you want to buy, what is being presented to you. These algorithms are very, very smart. They know what to show you. Just stop a minute, give yourself a few days. If you're still thinking about this item and you like love it, if you have the money for it, give it another couple of days, and then you can pull the trigger. Like, don't buy it just because every fashion girl or guy is telling you to buy it.
Love that. And I definitely use the 24-hour, if not more, rule in my shopping carts. You know, there's maybe something that you just saw a really good advertisement for, but 24 hours or a week later, do you still really need this item? I think that's a fantastic rule to stand and live by. The final question before we jump into Q&A, and our audience, feel free to add anything that you're thinking of right now in the Q&A. It is separate from the chat that we've been seeing used. It's just entitled Q&A, but feel free to drop anything there that we can answer at the end. For now, my panelists, after leaving today's session, what strategies can the audience implement into their lives to consume media and what it sells more responsibly? I think we've touched on this a little bit, but if you have any other thoughts or final takeaways, we'll go to Lindura first.
I think many things, but I think the most important things as consumers to do is to, like, one, get used to, like, just slowing down in terms of, like, if you see something you like, you don't need to, like, just jump on that purchase. Just like Annette said, like, leave it in your cart, but also, like, do research, like, get used to not just believing what other people are saying, but actually, like, going and doing that research for yourself to figure out, okay, let's, like, take the time to really look into this. So I think slowing down is a big one. I think also cultivate confidence, like cultivate self-confidence is huge, because a lot of times I am fully aware that, like, I will scroll on social media and still to this day, even with the awareness that I have, suddenly end up feeling less than, or wishing that I had something someone else had, or like, oh, she looks so cute, I wish I could look like that. Who knows? Those thoughts still enter my mind. So starting to become aware of how you feel, and, like, aware of how things are making you feel, like, call it out, like, call yourself out and be like, where is this coming from? Let me take a moment, show myself some self-love, figure out, like, how to boost myself up. And if it means unfollowing people, unfollow them. If it means getting off of social media, get off of social media. Really figure out within you how to, like, love on yourself the most, so that you can show up confidently in your own style, not what everyone else is wearing, however makes, with your values at the forefront, and not just, like, what the entire world is marketing, because that's our whole lives these days. The phone is just stalking us.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you. Annette, over to you.
Well, as a fellow influencer, like, I will say, yes, followers and like counts matter, but my number one tip to people is, if your follow list doesn't align with your values, if certain people you follow don't make you feel good about yourself, unfollow or mute them. Social media, we can dive into, like, the negatives of it, but it's also a wonderful place. I've connected with people across the globe because of my love of vintage thrifting. I meet up with people when I travel, or when they're traveling. Lexi and I are going to try and meet up when she's in LA. And so that's the beauty of it. So I want people to just, like, stop and take a moment and turn it into a positive thing, because I think if you feel empowered and happy with the content that you're seeing and also the education that you're getting on social media, it's really going to change the way that you think about it. And I will say, like, I think, Lindura, you talked about this about brands, and I feel the same way about just as consumers. We just need more people to be better at sustainability than a handful of people being perfect at it. So make a list. We're going into the new year, like 3 to 5 action items that you can implement in your life, and set a target of 3 months and then a year. And before you know it, you've made meaningful change. For me, at the beginning of this year, I said I was not going to buy anything new anymore for my house or for my wardrobe. Typically, like, I would say 80% of my home and wardrobe has been vintage or secondhand. But this year I said, I don't need to buy anything new. Everything, I'm an expert in this field. Like, I should be able to source everything on the secondhand market. And it's like, I pretty much a year into it, I'm like, I can never go back to buying anything new again. But it's even simple things like, if you are like, I want to be more mindful about my purchases, search for single source fabrics, for example. Even if the only place you can afford to shop is a big box retailer like Walmart or Target, look for 100% cotton, 100% linen. That is making a big difference, because when you're done with that item, you could use it as a cleaning rag, and then it'll biodegrade in like 5 months as opposed to 500 years. So there's a lot of small things that everybody can do. And that's what we need, is we need everybody just to pick a couple of things that they're going to change, rather than a few of us trying to be perfect.
Love it. And leaving off on that note with that answer, thank you, Annette. Elaine, we've had a lot of discussions here about, the psychology of media and all that. I wonder if you have some aspects from your research to add to what's been said.
Yes, I mean, picking up on the kind of psychology of consumer behaviour, we do know that the issue around fashion is very much linked with identity, and it's the way in which people present themselves to the external world. So it becomes really important that they're embodying something that makes them feel confident and good about themselves, as we've already heard from the last two panelists. And we also know that consumers are reluctant to stop buying because it's considered as being a sacrifice. And indeed, speaking to our students and the research that we've done, we know that consumers need something else to shift them away from excessive, inexpensive fashion. And a lot of those points that have already been made are really important. Be confident in yourself. Our research has shown that whilst people may want to buy vintage, they don't always have the confidence to understand how to style that. And if you think about the way in which fast fashion is marketed, it's very much an aesthetic that they're buying into, where they don't have to think. And I think to an extent, people have lost the habit of putting together different items from different retailers or even different decades in a way that makes them feel confident. And our research has shown that influencers show a positive way in which that can manifest itself. We also know that consumers get excited about consumption online. And our research has shown as well that it's not necessarily the owning of the product, but it's the process, the sourcing of it, the excitement of waiting for it to come and for it being delivered, and that whole unboxing effect. But actually, that can be experienced through sustainable behaviours as well. It can be experienced through renting or buying into the circular economy, like Depop and Vinted. So there is no need for sacrifice, but it is a mind shift.
Thank you. Yeah, those are amazing takeaways. And that wraps up the planned questions that we had. Fantastic responses from all, and we have some really great questions in our Q&A here. So I'm going to start at the top with Sarah's question. Sarah wants to know how we think problematic influencer hauls will be addressed, perhaps in the future, and maybe, in partner with this de-influencing phenomena going on right now. Does anyone want to take that question?
I think with TikTok, people are calling out these influencers who are doing these massive hauls. It's the one thing I like about TikTok. Like, people don't care about their feed or pissing off anybody. Doesn't matter if they have an audience or not. They're like, Joe Schmo's doing a Shein haul, I'm going to call them out on how gross that is and what that is. And I think that's happening right now. I think consumers are also realizing they don't need all this stuff. And I think part of that is the economy. I really think that people are like thinking twice, like, I don't need the same top in 3 different colors because 5 of the same bloggers told me to buy this. And I think over time, I think it's consumers and just social media users are just calling out people that, you know what, you don't need all this stuff. Even if you're just buying to show it off and then to send it back is still unsustainable because there's like the shipping costs, the emissions, but also a lot of times that stuff ends up in the trash bins in a third world country. So I like that we are having, you know, these conversations and people are holding influencers accountable and just saying like, I don't want this anymore. You are so out of touch. Like, I don't need to see your Chanel haul or even your Fashion Nova haul.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And since we have so many great questions, we might move on to the next one here. There's a question from Nita. Hi, Nita. Nita's also a ambassador at FTA with me. So great to see you here. And Nita asks, how can we initiate conversations with people in our circle about certain brands that may not be sustainable or ethical without coming across judgmental and genuinely encouraging them to reflect on the choices they make? Great question.
Oof. I mean, I would love an answer to this question because I also would like to know how. I feel like in my own experience, I think I tend to use the like, did you know aspect? Like, did you hear about the fact that there's toxic chemicals in this or whatever it is? But one thing that I will say that's maybe not something everyone wants to do is, but I love movies and I love getting together. So I've started like having documentary nights where I just like invite people over and we watch a documentary because then I don't have to say it. And we all learn. And I feel like that like has a ripple effect. I think like film and art in general is like a really powerful way to learn and be sharing and to start conversations. So like the more we can sort of bring, I think art helps us bring hard topics into our everyday lives and really actually confront them in a loving way as opposed to a judgmental way. So that's my tip. Anyone else have any others?
Lindura, do you have any documentaries that are your go-tos for exposing friends to those concepts?
Oh, The True Cost, Fashion Reimagined. I should compile a list. I'm really bad off the top of my head, but those are the 2 off the top of my head.
Those are 2 great ones. Annette, go ahead. I know you're gonna dive in.
Okay, I could totally. Oh, actually, what I was going to say is I can sometimes tend to come across condescending when I'm trying to, I know this about me, when I'm trying to educate people. So I sometimes, my mom has this old saying is like, you want to talk to the door so the window listens kind of situation. It's like an old Armenian saying. So instead of telling people like, oh, you know, that's really bad, you know, I like to go forward and say like, oh, I know you love vintage so much. Do you want me to take you thrifting and show you how you can buy all like a whole, like your whole like fall wish list at the thrift store or at this flea market? You'll have unique style, you'll save money, and it's really good for the environment. So that's what I've been trying to do with my friends, and it seems to be working because I think before they just thought it was like doom and gloom, like everything that they were touching was like laced with toxic chemicals, somebody was abused. And I get it, it's like very traumatic for some people to just constantly hear the bad news and they're like carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. So that's what I've been trying to do is like, hey, let's go vintage shopping together. Oh, can I help you like buy that designer bag you've been wanting, but I can find it for you on the secondhand market and you'll have extra money to go on a trip with me.
Amazing. Love it.
I think as well, we are seeing a difference socially, and I don't think anyone can buy into fast fashion now and not know that there are consequences for the workers and for the environment as well. Those conversations are happening, and I think that rather than kind of placing guilt on people, the kind of positive aspects of documentaries showing alternative means are really positive. But that discourse that's happening through influencers, I think, is also important too, in exposing and trying to shape different kind of ideologies that can show a different way of consuming and still be fashionable or stylish.
Yes, thank you. Guillermo has a question that sort of ties into the one that Nita asked, and that, yes, this documentary type of solution works great with friends, but thinking about maybe the business to business landscape or aspect, how might you approach a company or someone that you're working with in that scenario? I know this might not be necessarily our realm on the panel, but if anyone has any insights there.
I think we don't want to see, brands don't want to see themselves portrayed in a bad light. Just recently in the UK, there was a programme on the BBC that was looking at Boohoo, the fast fashion retailer, and someone went behind the scenes to understand how they negotiate their costings and so forth. And it was an interesting way to kind of highlight that, but it kind of falls within the realms of greenwashing, that a number of fast fashion retailers fall within that kind of way in which they're portraying themselves to be greener than they actually are. But I also think that consumers are becoming wise to that. And those exposés, I definitely think, are beneficial. And ultimately, Boohoo and those other retailers have to answer to their stakeholders. So, you know, it's not just about fashion, it's about the whole way the economy works.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have lots of panelists or attendees that are looking for your expertise in terms of resources to take and run with after this. So we sort of went over some documentaries there, but do any panelists have recommendations for websites, newsletters, blogs on circular and sustainable fashion that our attendees today could follow or subscribe to and keep these conversations going?
That's a good question. I think I kind of just research some stuff. I feel like I've been in this space for so long. Randomly stuff comes my way. I'm sorry, I can't give you like a specific website or article, but I'm curious if, Elaine or Lindura have resources. Because like I said, I just like look into, B Corp's website and just like educate myself. Then I like look at, even Fashion Takes Action, like so many different sustainable websites that are similar. I could probably list them actually now that I'm talking about it, but just like really inform myself. Like when I was looking at buying, before I went 100% secondhand, when I was buying new, I realized like I need to only buy single source item materials. And I learned that from just like doing a ton of research, but I want to know where everybody else is getting their information. I feel like I just kind of get into this like dark hole of like the internet and I just like research a ton.
Yeah, I have two that I two newsletters that I love to get. One of them is from Fashion Innovation, which I believe operates out of New York City. But they, like when it comes to fashion news, like once again, like someone already mentioned, the doom and gloom isn't really where it's at, because that kind of leaves you in like a very hopeless feeling place. But there's actually a lot more, because we're all talking about sustainability. There's so many people innovating and doing really cool things. And I love Fashion Innovation's newsletter, because they often have webinars such as this, which will educate you on different cool things that are going on. And just like in fashion industry goings on that are in the more hopeful direction. Green Story is a business that works with brands directly to help them reduce their carbon footprint, essentially, whether that's through offsets or other things. But their newsletter is also surprisingly informative. And they'll often like have brands on to talk about like how that brand has reduced their carbon footprint or made sustainable changes. I think it's a great way to find out what's going on in the world, and also just like discover new brands to support instead of what you were previously supporting. So those are two of my favorites for sort of finding new cool things in the sustainable fashion universe.
I think as well, moving beyond that, there are kind of makers that can be followed that perhaps have information on how to upcycle and rework garments. And certainly there's a bit of a trend, I think, for mending, visible mending, as a way to kind of create new value and individuality into garments. So it's not just, I guess, about the Consumption Act or the Sharing Act, but thinking about how to utilize what we already have.
Amazing, thank you. Annette, Nicole really liked your point earlier about making a small list of action items that one person can take on as sort of small acts to better themselves and the environment in their day-to-day. Could I ask, just as a closing, for each panelist to give us one thing that we could add to that list, or individuals could add to their day-to-day lives?
Sure. I would say before you buy anything new, see if you can buy it on the secondhand market, Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Poshmark. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's an appliance, if it's furniture, if it's clothing. I'm guaranteeing you that you will be able to find it, and you're giving new life to a piece that was already produced.
Mm-hmm. Along that vein, I'll say, before you throw anything away, is there a way that you could prepare it? Is there someone who you could give it to that could make use of it? For example, in Toronto, at the remote event that Fashion Takes Action hosted last year, I was thrilled to discover it. There's so many businesses that are upcycling textiles. So a lot of times when I'm like, oh crap, I don't know what to do with this, it ripped or something, and I'm not handy enough to fix it myself, there are many people who can make use of those things. So maybe see if there's an alternate to throwing it away.
I think my takeaway would be think quality over quantity. Quality will not just last you, but it will fit you better. And if you're buying better, be it secondhand or upcycling in some way, the innovation and creativity of the design is way more impactful than something that's been stitched together with flimsy material. So it will look better on you. So I think quality trumps quantity.
Can I say one more quickly?
Yes, go ahead.
Don't be afraid to talk to brands. Reach out, ask them questions. Like, I feel like the more of us that are talking directly to them about this, the more they're realizing that people are watching them, people are paying attention, and they'll, work harder to get us the answers we want to hear.
Agreed.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the three of you, Annette, Lindura, and Elaine, for being here. And thank you to our attendees for staying on right until the end. We've shared the contact information for each of the panelists in the chat. So if you'd like to follow along to their social medias, and if we didn't get to your question today, I'm sure they'd be happy to chat with you afterwards. Also remember, as another great resource, as we were saying, to follow Fashion Takes Action on LinkedIn and Instagram. It's just at Fashion Takes Action, and we're posting really great resources and information every day, and we'll share more information about webinars like this. We also have some really fantastic events coming up, as Lindura mentioned, with Remote. And that is all. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
And my DMs are always open. Feel free to DM me if you have a question.
Mine too. Love chatting.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.